Welcome back to the 80s at the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Kaylee Felio from PartsEdge is with us with the A-list parts panel. And Kaylee, you have been doing a great job with these panels. So congratulations to you and all the success that PartsEdge is having.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. I'm really excited for this panel today.
I love, Kaylee, the title that you put together because it really rings home with a lot of dealers. And I'm excited about treating your parts inventory like you treat your used car inventory. So, Kaylee, I'm going to step out of the way and I'll be back to see you towards the end. So, the show is yours.
Thank you. Well, let's start with everyone just introducing themselves quickly. I'm sure a lot of people know already who you are, but let's start with Ed.
So I'm the COO of Bozard Ford Lincoln, Ed Roberts. Sorry. We are located down here in St. Augustine, Florida, so we're still enjoying what you guys are just now getting here in the middle of May. We're enjoying all the sunshine and look forward to today's panel.
Thank you.
I'm Robert Migliaccio at CMA Valley's Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Stanton, Virginia, and thanks for sending some of that weather my way, Ed, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Mike Weldon from the Hansel Auto Group out here in sunny California.
Shon Kingrey, the Vice President of Fixed Operations for the Kaiser Automotive Group up in Madison, Wisconsin, where it's finally not snowing.
We're all over the place. And I'm in Arizona, and it's getting sunnier and warmer where I am. So today we're going to talk about, obviously, just the parts inventory and starting to treat it like the used car inventory. And, you know, everyone, we all know the parts department is responsible for more than half of dealership profits. And I wanted to ask you guys, why do you think that dealerships hesitate to invest in tools and support for the parts department compared to, you know, used car inventory and used car managers? They have tools to help them. So I want to see what you guys think. So we'll start with Ed.
So that's a great question there, Kaylee. The glamour, no matter what store you go to, there's very few stores that really focused on the fixed ops. And when you think fixed ops, first thing you think of is service. So kind of the end of that thought becomes parts, because it's just kind of a gap filler there to kind of keep service moving along. And we focus on used cars because the dealer, and just to explain to the crowd a bit, the dealer typically only owns the inventory of used cars and parts inventory. And sometimes maybe not even own the used car inventory. But they understand that. They understand that the value of it changes daily. And even though parts value may not change as fast, it's still changing daily as well. But we don't look at that part as having less value on it until after it gets to that 1 year mark. On the used car deal, we're looking at the value of that thing dropping from day one. It's changing from the first day that we get it. So there's so much more attention goes to that. And that's where all the glamour is. Glamour is always on the sales side, and the rest of the fixed ops is to support that. But the better support you can give it, the more it can run.
Absolutely. And Robert, what do you think about that? Why do you think dealerships hesitate to invest in tools for parts?
I think at the end of the day, they look at the processes back there and what's needed for it. And I think we kind of treat it kind of archaic in what it is, and the fact that I'm going to say most people feel that there isn't a lot of need for processes and products back there to keep the parts moving off the shelf. Like Ed said, you know, the big, large focus is always pushed at the dealer level, that it's there to support the service department, and then everything else is kind of the extra icing on the cake if they get anything additional. So, you know, seeing stores utilize it and moving forward is a great benefit I've seen. So.
Absolutely. And, you know, I wanted to add to, it's kind of a question, and we're still on the same question, but when you look at a used car manager and how many cars they're managing, I think a larger operation, maybe, I don't know, 100 a month or so. I'm just throwing a number out there. But how many parts do you guys think a parts manager is managing? Because as far as I can tell, it's thousands of part numbers that they're managing. So I would think about parts like as little cars. So Mike, just based off that question, why do you think dealerships hesitate?
historically, it's always been the glamour has been up front. I mean, you take it all away. You know, we're here to sell cars, and the ownership, a lot of the ownership has come out of the retail side of the house, and they did, you know, they embrace fixed because it's attached to the building. But I think a lot have learned that it's not the back end anymore; it's the backbone of the business. And it's where the foundation of stability is. Whereas, you know, the front end is variable and it changes. And a lot of the dealers' money is tied up in inventory, and that's parts inventory as well. It's just as high as new vehicle inventory. And historically, they didn't want to deal with it. And you guys go back and do your thing and just keep me out of trouble.
Absolutely. And Shon, lastly, what do you think?
You know, I think if you look at the layout of a dealership, look where you put parts. You put them in the back. You build walls around them. You don't let people in, by the way. I mean, God forbid you have a salesperson walk through, let alone a service advisor or service manager. We kind of created our own environment, if you think about it. Look where you put them. You put them in a vault. You give them the checkbook because they're in charge of POs and everything. You trust them with everything, but you don't. It's not inviting. You really don't want, and I know Ed runs a great store. You don't want text on the block parts counter. We truly try to keep people away. So you kind of created it yourself. We all have. But to Ed's point, to everybody else's point, I think everybody now realizes that fixed operations in 2023 is where the money's at. It's not coming from the front end this year. It's got to come from us.
Yes, definitely. And that kind of leads me to the next question is the mindset shift of, you know, if it's working, don't mess with it. I think that we always do that, right? And I want to challenge that. And it's like, why don't we make small improvements to make things that much better? Because even if it is working, there's always room to improve in all areas of our life, especially parts. So, what was my question with that? I'm not even sure. So, why don't parts departments do more of that? I guess is my question. And I'm going to start with Shon. So we're going to work backwards.
Well, I think, you know, and it started here, and it started out of the intro. Look at all the tools that are available for the front end. I mean, there's more CRM tools and, you know, Viata. We can go down the list, and, you know, there's hundreds of them. And look how many are available for parts, like one or two, and they kind of come and go. They're not expensive, by the way, in the schemes of what you're spending on. As you do a buy sell, you start to realize what really is involved on the front end and how many tools they have to sell a car. And parts, we give one or two. And I think that's why every time you raise your hand, it's like, wait a minute, you actually need help? Why would you need help? We've never helped you before. Why would we start now? So I think it all goes back to the way it's always been set up. You got to change your mindset. You know, Ted and I and Tully were talking not long ago about we got to get off the walker phase. I think we're going to use that term now, by the way. We got to get rid of the walkers. Okay, you got to stop thinking like we're 100 years old, guys. We got to get with the times, and everybody's scared to change. It's time to change.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. And Mike, what about you guys? Because I mean, you know, we work with you guys, and I know with the process, we've been working with you for a while, and a lot of things don't change a little, you know, with your guys' process, I think, as far as inventory control goes. But why do you think that, you know, the mindset with parts?
I think we've changed that. I mean, we've progressed. I use the old philosophy: it ain't broke, break it, because it can always be better. Yeah. I'm lucky that the guys I partner with, they're progressive, so it allows you to be creative. And you know, Shon, you know, hit the nail on the head is because you've been surviving this long this way. Well, I don't know about you, but I want to survive in luxury if I can, and I want to be productive, and try to make our people productive and appreciate their jobs and get engaged and get excited about what they do, so that they feel that there's value. So yeah, the ownership has to look at it a lot differently than they have in the past. It's not the survival of the survival. It's you've got to invest. If you invest, you'll get a return on your investment. I guarantee you that.
100%. And Robert, what do you think?
Pretty similar kind of concept here. I mean, it's going to be the going around. You know, we've always kind of kept fixed operations and specifically the parts side of things as kind of the way it's ran for however it's been is how it's going to be no matter what you've done. We may have changed how we look up our parts with parts catalogs and small things over the years, but even the tools provided from the manufacturers as well, when you look at the scope of things, the sales department gets a bunch of feedback and products and tools used, even just from the manufacturers alone, let alone outside vendors. So, we have a kind of a big undertaking when it comes to advancing the parts department and getting them involved in new products and new processes to get them to evolve with us and keep moving forward and kind of join in the times, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And lastly, Ed, with your guys' operation, because I know it's fairly large.
So you said if it's working, don't mess with it. And I like to challenge that. We are a store that wants to challenge status quo. But let's look at that for a minute. If it's not broke, why mess with it? Well, like Mike said, break it then, because ultimately anything you have can be better. Mm-hmm. And a good reference point is let's go back to 1903. And that's where our parts departments live for the most part. But let's go back to 1903, and there was the Model T. It put America on wheels. And it did not change for years and years and years, simply because there wasn't any competition. But once there became competition, then it had to improve and it had to get better. And so competition improves everything. This pen, for instance, it's easy to make this pen better. Make click too loud when I use it. Work on that. It's easy to make it better than it is to create it. Well, it's already created. Now let's find ways to go make it better. So we got to shift the mind to, hey, what can we get out of it? Not it's functioning, because functioning doesn't mean it's performing.
That's a great point. I love the perspective and how you painted the picture on that one. I want to switch it up and talk about, the DMS and just, do you guys believe that the DMS can do more to help parts managers just easily forecast demand, prioritize which items to stock? Because there's so many different DMSs out there and they're all capable, but do you feel like they could do more for the parts managers? And we'll start with Ed and circle back around.
It's just like the dealership. It's ran the same way, where the DMS is built around the sales department, mm-hmm. then the service department, then we need an accounting department, and we got to hold on to we got to have something to track our parts with, and so it's the afterthought as well. So that's why it creates the opportunity for you guys to come in with PartsEdge and put people on the edge and be able to make things happen, because those tools aren't there with the traditional DMSs. The newer ones that's coming out, yes, they put a little bit more focus on it, because there's a lot more conversation coming about. As Shon said, 2023 Fixed is what's going to carry the store. It's always carried the stores in down times, but why can't it carry the store in the good times as well? And so it's up to us to create those products. Hopefully the DMSs will get it and they'll put it in part of theirs, but unfortunately it's been ran the DMS has been ran the same way as the dealership has. Is let's build it around the sales department, and then everything else is an add-on.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And Robert, what about you? What do you think about the DMSs?
Kind of similar concept there. What Ed's gotten on, it's kind of funny when you dig deep into the DMS and what their abilities are and what they're capable of doing. You find that it's very elementary. There's not a lot going on, specifically in the parts department. When you get down deep into it, it'll hold your inventory. It'll allow you to class things differently and source them out. But realistically, when you're looking at different ways and ideas of how to move parts and seeing them in a kind of a easy concept of a chart on a daily basis, it definitely makes it difficult. You have to dig in deep when you're going through a parts inventory to really kind of get an idea. And the majority of the time you end up doing a parts inventory to figure out that scale and scope of what everything is, just to get to that point. And that takes, a day or 2, 3 days, depending on the size of your parts department. So, it really kind of weighs on how we do things. And we just expect the computer to say we have it in stock or don't have it in stock, and order it if we don't have it, kind of situation, which I think ultimately doesn't give us a full scale or scope of what we're really dealing with on a daily basis of our full inventory. So
definitely. Well, yeah. And there's just going back to the thousands of part numbers that managers are managing. There's a lot of data involved in what to stock and what not to stock. And I hear from parts managers that either are taking over, that they just let what the previous manager had set up, they just kind of do that, or someone that's been there for a while is like, well, it's been like that and I don't do anything because it's working. So Mike, going back to that question, do you believe that DMSs are, helping parts managers?
The average dealership out there uses about 25% of what that system actually provides.
Yeah.
And people are fearful of getting in there, or they don't understand it. On the DMS side, I think they can do a better job of organizing their software format, so it's easier to be assessed, because it's kind of convoluted. That I've used 3 different formats over my career, and the add-on service and parts always seemed to be an add-on to something that they bought a part of, that they're trying to implement into their system to make us efficient, and it only works half the time. And that's where we then have to search for support mechanisms. PartsEdge is one that one simplifies their process, our process, and allows the manager then to effectively operate his business. Because you can get entwined in all these little dark spots within that DMS and not get anything out of it. And then at the end of the day, your obsolescence is extremely high, and your turns are terrible, and you can't figure out why you got a bunch of lefts, and you should have lefts and rights. And so, we need to simplify the process. But one, we have to learn to use the system. And I think if you use the system, along with some of the other supporting mechanisms, you can capitalize on it. I'm blessed. I've got some pretty strong parts managers that we brought along the way that are not stuck in just using that 25%.
That's great. And Shon, what about you guys?
Well, Michael kind of took it from me there. You got to ask yourself how much of your DMS you're really using and not using. You go out to NADA and you go through the booths, and I'm working for a group, by the way, Kaylee, you know this, that has 3 different DMSs all in one group. So you go out to NADA. Yeah, I know, Robert. You go out to NADA and they show you something like, I didn't even know my system did that. And now you've got the RIMs and all the other programs the OEMs bring into place. You take over stores as you do buy sales. You find out those parts managers don't even know what their inventory value is. They don't even know how to run obsolescence or how to control it, or really even what obsolescence is. And again, take that one step further. Answer your question, quick, Kaylee. Is the DMS obsolescence? Does it match up with the OEM? Because think about it. A GM OEM, obsolescence is 15 to 13 months, but a DMS says it's 9 to 12. Well, now you get a dealer principal goes to a 20 group and says, well, you have so much obsolescence, but do you? Because if you can't return a part till 13 to 15 months, and the DMS says it's dead at 12, now it's an inflated or a false inventory value, and you're holding people accountable for stuff that isn't true. I think it's time for the DMS to catch up with what the OEMs are doing.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah, because each OEM is a little bit differently with their guidelines on whether or not what time frame you can return a part. And right. I think what we do is, it's 13 months or older or 12 months or older, it's obsolescence. Right. And that actually kind of led me into the next question about manufacturer programs. And really just, do you guys believe that parts managers should completely rely on the manufacturer programs to identify what they should be stocking? And I'll start with Shon, and we'll work backwards.
I think you got to have a parts manager that critiques that. So, for example, first of all, you almost don't have a choice, because if you want return reserve or you want to return anything, you got to go through it anyway. They kind of have you hostage. It is what it is, guys. You're going to walk the path whether you want to or not. But again, you have to find out what that sweet spot is, whether it's 89%, 96%, what depends on the OEM, obviously. But listen, if you run collision centers, we have 4 collision centers. I don't need 5, to Michael's point, I don't need 5 right-hand fenders. All right. It may tell me that I do, but you got to be able to look at that. You got to have a parts manager that has the capacity or the ability to learn to be able to critique that inventory and what it's saying you need to stock versus what you actually need.
Mm-hmm. And maintain that compliance.
Correct. And
making sure you guys set guidelines of like, this is what we want to maintain. We don't want to stock everything, but yeah, because that's the other thing is.
It's a game. No,
it's a game.
It is a game.
Yeah. Yeah, because they protect what sells. They're not protecting your whole entire inventory, and there are stuff that sells that they're not protecting. So, correct. With that, we'll go to Michael or Mike.
Well, Shon nailed it. A program is a program. Learn the program, master the program, and use it to your advantage. The manufacturer's using it to their advantage. So you need to be just as smart as a manufacturer as what benefits you in your market area. You're sure in the heck not going to stock a bunch of sheet metal that doesn't move, whereas your mechanical parts move 3 times, and you just have to work that flexibility. And I think it's really important. I think that the emphasis really is on training and understand formats, because it can be all convoluted. You can get totally bound up by it if you don't understand it. So you need to sit down, you need to get a number of people together and then hash it out as to what everybody mutually understands and how we can manage this within our environment to get the best return on our investment.
I think you guys hit the nail on the head. Robert, what about you?
There isn't much left to really kind of say. Those two really stole the thunder on all that there, but it is that. I mean, everything is there. It's a game that's played on every manufacturer. Every one of them have benefits that benefit them, and it's a matter of having somebody who's smart enough within your dealership to play the game back and keep yourself set up. I mean, I've seen situations where their automated system tells you to order 1 rotor in, and there's no reason you should have 1 rotor for a vehicle, so you have to have a manager who knows when he sees those things, like Ed was saying before, and Shon, Mike, has to be able to look at that and critique it and say, look, I shouldn't be stocking this one part. I need to be stocking more. But ultimately, you have to play the game. You have to work the manufacturer's system, and really needs to kind of pertain and be in your favor at the end of the day, and make sure it's working. Weighing out the cost benefits against having it and not having it, and the majority of the time you end up still playing at the end of the day. There's no way around it. So, I know here we always just make the best of it, do what we can, and utilize whatever we get back to help us with those obsolescence aspects of things, and ways to make sure we're getting the parts that can get back returned when they need to, and then, unloading what we have in obsolescence and moving it on and getting it out of inventory, keeping it fresh.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so many great things about the programs. It's just a matter of getting the DMS to work better for the parts manager to help them see how to play the game. And Ed, what about you?
So this might not be the popular one, but I like the manufacturer programs. And the reason I say that is because we like people that come into our stores that are turnkey, that's got all the experience in the world, and there's nothing wrong with them. They don't exist, but they moved into the area, whatever, and we love those because they're turnkey. Well, that's because of experience. They've been down that path. Well, the manufacturer, that's R&D for them. They know what the failure rate of these parts are, so they can tell us what we're going to need before we know we need them, because they've done all the research to be able to do the R&D. They've done all the research to know what those things are. Then with that, when they make those recommendations for those things, they know the bolts that needs to be replaced, rather than us order the part that needs to be, and then we go to put it on. Well, these bolts aren't reusable, and then we have to order the bolts. They already know those things. The downside to it is, one, yes, like these guys said, we got to make sure that we don't let it overstock us or whatever else. But the downside is our DMS, or one of the downsides is our DMS. If there's not sales history on the manufactured products that they're recommending, it automatically puts it in obsolescence. And it's not obsolescence, it's just not a sales history. And so it depends on the DMS that you're on how that works. But those two has got to really marry for it to work. So now we got our parts manager trying to figure out, okay, what is the DMS telling me? What is the manufacturer telling me? And we're amplifying their workload. And that's where, like every one of the guys said, you got to have somebody that really understands it, or got to have somebody that's really smart. Well, that's because we're throwing obstacles at them. We're throwing an obstacle with manufacturers say you need this. The DMS says, well, that's going to be obsolete. That's whatever else. And then the quantity that comes along with it. So they have to tie together. They got to do a better job of tying together. But I do support the manufacturing programs because they know what we're going to need before we need it.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, the intention of that question was not to throw the manufacturer programs down. And really just, that kind of leads to my next question is, what systems and processes or tools that you guys have implemented to help marry those two to see, the bigger picture? Because that is a big issue, is the DMS and they don't really talk to each other. So Ed, we'll start with you and work our way.
Well, I think Shon said earlier, there's not very many products out there that helps us do those things. And that's where it helps with having guys like you that can come out and help us with those things, because there's not technology that ties it together and helps and really supports it. So we all have to have that parts manager to manually do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to have the technology that helps us automatically do it. And when that happens, we'll become more efficient. And so companies like you that can come in and help us be more efficient with those things is key to me.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. What about you guys, Robert?
I definitely agree in that scale. You know, we look at my parts manager's time, and him and I meet regularly, and the fact that he spends so much time on paperwork and doing all the little incidentals here and there, he doesn't get a lot of time to actually do anything other than that. So when Ed's talking about having that efficiency and that aspect of having tools there, that's where we really lack in the parts department. We have a guy that has to sit at the desk and really kind of analyze and deep dive into everything regularly, when there's so much more he could be doing with his time to better help to move the department in any aspect of sales or inventory, obsolescence, doing all that. But really kind of spending the time, you know, and putting the two together is a key. And that's where I think we definitely need the products out there to help us kind of move into the future with this stuff.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time. And I think the thing to take away too is the parts manager still has to analyze the data and still has to look at everything. It's just like a used car manager. They just have a tool to do it a little bit faster. So Michael, what about you guys?
I got to tell you that the more that I can turn my parts managers into an entrepreneur and not a paper or a number pusher, the more we're going to grow our business. Mm-hmm. And by supporting them and getting them the necessary, either if it's software, hardware, you know, whatever it takes to get that process to flow correctly, I'm going to embrace. I like my parts managers. And I want them to be regular people. Everybody says parts is parts, but it really, it's an integral part of our business. The second biggest investment within, you know, a dealership, besides vehicle inventory, and we've got to make good use, and we got to put good people in there. And the only way we can put good people in there is if we support them and give them the products and the systems and for them to be good at their job. Mm-hmm. And we need to simplify that as much as we can. And I think, you know, with your format, I taught it every time I get a chance. You know, I put it in place pretty near 11 years ago, and it's the best move I ever made, because now my parts managers have become humans. Mm-hmm. And they get out and they talk to you, and they want to grow their business, and they got these new ideas, and they're talking to the sales department about displays and things that they never did before, because now they have the time to do that. Yep,
that's important. And you don't hear that very often, parts people talking to salespeople. So, Shon, close us out.
Well, I think you got to talk about accountability too. You know, as you get into month end, you got to ask, when's the last time you went back to parts and you went with the parts manager to the controller to the office manager and made sure that the reconciliation was done correctly, and that the numbers are correct and that they match and that they're in the ballpark and you don't have a problem. When's the last time you did a cycle count? When's the last time you talked about cycle counts? I mean, there's so many things you can hold accountable for a parts manager that we just don't do because we just pretend they don't exist. And unfortunately, we got to have them. We all know that. But giving them the attention and accountability makes the year-end close a whole lot easier too, by the way. Nobody likes surprises. And there are tools out there that you can do that. And if you teach them, they want to learn too, I promise you.
Right.
They do.
They're parts makers.
They are.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
They are.
I like that. We're going to trademark that.
Yeah.
Well, Kaylee, great job. Great job to the panel. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes along the way. I think our audience did as well. I'd like to thank everybody. Ed Roberts, Michael Weldon, Shon Kingrey in Fixed Ops Roundtable Central, Robert Miggs from Carter Myers Automotive, and Kaylee Felio. Thank you for putting all this together.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully people will start treating parts like used cars after this.
Great questions and even better answers. Kaylee, if our audience wants to reach out to you at PartsEdge, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can call, email me, go to our website, partsedge.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So yeah, just reach out.
All right, everybody. PartsEdge has the tools. You heard it here. And again, the A-list panel here with PartsEdge back at the 80s at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thank you.